Imagine, waking up completely broke, like dodging a literal mob of debt collectors at your front door. And then,
Sounds stressful already.
right. And then you get a letter saying royalty is going to be crashing at your house next week.
Oh, man.
Do you just admit defeat? Or do you, secretly sell off your grandmother's heirloom wedding ring just to buy a crystal chandelier to keep up appearances?
I mean, most of us would probably just, fake a family emergency and cancel.
Exactly.
But if your entire sense of self-worth is tied to this illusion of status, well, admitting you're broke is practically a death sentence. You'll mortgage your soul for that chandelier.
And that catastrophic decision is basically the beating heart of the 2026 dark comedy Savage House. So today we are taking a deep dive into this incredibly striking period film.
It's quite a ride.
It really is. It stars Richard E. Grant and Claire Foy, and on the surface, it's just this chaotic romp through the 1700s. But looking through all the sources we've gathered...
Yeah, we have a lot of good stuff today.
We do. We've got critical reviews from Mashable and The Guardian, box office data from Tenbow, excerpts from the actual script, and even some great YouTube interview transcripts with the director, Peter Glanz, and the star, Richard E. Grant.
Which really help peel back the layers.
Definitely. And our mission for you today is to unpack those layers. Because it becomes clear that this movie is doing something much heavier. It's operating like a funhouse mirror.
That's a great way to put it.
Because if you look at our modern news directly, it's blindingly stressful, right?
Yeah.
But put those exact same modern anxieties into a powdered wig, and suddenly, you can actually process the chaos.
That distance is just so crucial. The story drops you straight into 18th century England, and the historical backdrop is doing like a tremendous amount of heavy lifting to mirror our current era.
Oh, absolutely.
You have a massive smallpox outbreak keeping everyone just terrified of infection.
Which sounds a little familiar.
Right, yeah. And there's this highly anticipated, once in 500 years, total solar eclipse hanging over everyone's heads like an omen. And then on top of all of that, there's the Jacobite uprising.
Okay, let's unpack the Jacobite uprising for a second, because reading the script, it treats it like this ambient anxiety humming in the background of every single scene.
Yeah, it's always there.
Because this wasn't just, a polite political disagreement. This was an existential threat to the ruling class.
Completely. The Jacobites were actively trying to restore the exiled Stuart king to the British throne, actively plotting to overthrow the ruling House of Hanover.
So the stakes were literal treason.
Exactly. So the aristocracy at the time was living in this state of constant violent paranoia. I mean, you never knew if your neighbor was secretly funding a rebellion.
Wow.
It was an era defined by just this deep fear of sudden regime change. And it was all fueled by rampant rumors because, well, information traveled so slowly back then.
Right. No internet to fact check anything. So you mix a plague, celestial doom, and political treason, and you just drop our main characters right into the middle of the cocktail.
A very explosive cocktail.
Seriously. So we meet Sir Chauncey Savage and Lady Savage. And their dynamic is fascinating because they are basically a collision of two very different types of desperation.
Yeah, they really are.
Chauncey, played by Richard E. Grant, he's a Welsh upstart. He grew up in the slums, like a penniless peddler's son who literally bought his title.
Yeah.
He's the definition of new money. Except he's totally run out of money.
And then you have Lady Savage, played by Claire Foy, who is his exact foil. She comes from true blue-blooded aristocracy, though, her family has fallen into utter disgrace.
Right, she didn't have much left either.
No, but she didn't marry Chauncey for social mobility. She married him out of sheer boredom.
That is so dark.
It is. He was a rogue, a risk, a total break from the stifling rules of her class.
But the risk completely bankrupted them. They are living in this crumbling Yorkshire estate, and Chauncey is running this bizarre Ponzi scheme where he's selling the exact same parcels of land to multiple different investors.
Which is just a disaster waiting to happen.
Total disaster. And that brings us to the inciting incident. They get a letter. The Duke and Duchess of Devonshire are doing a Yorkshire tour, but their original host, Lord Vernon, just came down with a grisly case of the pox.
Bad news for Lord Vernon.
Very bad. So the royals need a place to crash in 10 days.
Which triggers this immediate, biological panic in Chauncey. We often talk about status anxiety as a modern phenomenon, right?
Yeah, like keeping up with the Joneses.
Exactly. But evolutionary psychologists will tell you that the fear of losing your social standing actually triggers the exact same fight-or-flight response in the amygdala as a physical predator.
Wait, really? Like running from a bear?
Yes. Because historically, if You were ostracized from the tribe. You starved. It was a death sentence. So for Chauncey, scrubbing away the stench of being an outsider isn't just vanity. His brain is literally telling him it's a matter of survival.
Okay, let's unpack this with a modern analogy for the listener. It's like if royalty DM'd you saying they're crashing at your studio apartment tomorrow, and instead of just saying no, you sell your car to buy a chandelier just to keep up appearances.
That is exactly what it is.
Because they actually decide to host the dinner.
Yeah.
And it requires a theatrical production of staggering proportion.
Oh, it's absurd.
Lady Savage starts secretly selling off her mother's pearls. She pawns her grandmother's cherished ring to a merchant just to rent fancy chairs and hire extra footmen.
The ultimate fake-it-till-you-make-it scheme.
Literally. But the desperation to hide their poverty can't just be masked by rented furniture. It actually starts bleeding into the physical house itself.
Yeah, the production designer, Gary Williamson, he leaned heavily into that idea. The house is a manifestation of their moral and financial decay. Like, it is rotting from the inside out.
See, I'll be honest, when I was reading the script and looking at the reviews, some of the visual choices felt incredibly indulgent.
How do you mean?
Well, the cinematographer, Adriana Goldwyn, shoots these beautiful, wide, aristocratic shots, but then he aggressively cuts to these horrific close-ups.
Oh, the close-ups are intense.
Behead and foul.
Yeah.
Trodden piles of ambiguous filth. Servants literally rotating rotting fruit in bowls so the guests only see the fresh side. Here's where it gets really interesting for me. Is all this grime just for shock value? Or does it serve a narrative purpose? Because the narrator literally describes Chauncey as collapsing into himself, quote, like an undercooked souffle.
It's visceral, certainly, but it's anchored in historical and thematic reality. It's not just shock value.
Lay it on me.
So the rotting fruit, for instance, wasn't just a metaphor. In that era, sugar and imported fruit were astronomical luxuries. Aristocrats would literally rent pineapples for centerpieces and just leave them out until they rotted purely as a flex of wealth.
Renting a pineapple? That is insane.
I know, right? And the film takes that historical truth and amplifies it to show how the savages are consumed by their ambition. Their environment is being consumed, and physically, Chauncey is collapsing.
Well, he suffers from severe gout, which back then was called the king's disease.
A fascinating label, isn't it?
Totally.
Gout is essentially uric acid crystallizing in your joints like shards of glass, and it's directly linked to an overindulgence in rich meat and alcohol.
Sounds agonizing.
It is. Today, we view it as a medical condition, but in the 18th century, it was a status symbol. You had to be incredibly wealthy to afford the diet required to get gout.
And he refuses to stop drinking. The doctor tells him to lay off the port. And Chauncey is just chugging wine to deal with the agonizing pain of the disease that is caused by the wine.
Right. And to treat it, Dr. Hemmings applies leeches. There's this unsettling scene where the doctor gleefully applies them, saying, "And my favorite, 4, my best leech."
Ugh. Gross.
It plays as dark comedy, but it's rooted in humoral theory, which was the prevailing medical belief of the time, that the body was governed by 4 humors or fluids.
Right, the whole bloodletting thing.
Yeah, exactly. If you were sick, it meant your blood was corrupt, so they simply drained it out of you.
It's horrific, but you're right, it highlights the absurdity. They are literally being bled dry by their need to maintain this image. And we can't talk about their image without talking about the wigs.
Oh, the wigs are iconic.
Chauncey is walking around wearing a massive 15-foot-tall powdered wig. Claire Foy's character has this brilliant line where she deadpans that they're going to have to get a carpenter in to raise the ceilings if his wigs get any larger.
The physics of the wig alone is just a great piece of visual comedy. But again, it stems from a really dark historical reality.
It always does.
Right. Powdered wigs originally became popular in Europe to cover up the hair loss and scalp sores associated with the syphilis epidemic.
Oh, wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, and over time, they morphed into these towering symbols of wealth and class. So Chauncey's using this grotesque abundance of fake hair to cover up his own societal syphilis.
His lack of aristocratic blood.
Exactly. It's all a cover-up.
You know, Peter Glanz explicitly mentioned films like Stanley Kubrick's Barry Lyndon and Peter Greenaway's The Draftsman's Contract as his aesthetic influences. And you really feel that DNA here.
Oh, heavily.
Those are movies where the rigid, perfectly manicured structures of society just barely conceal absolute cruelty and chaos underneath.
And pulling off that tone requires very specific performances. The Guardian review noted that the film could have easily become a haranguingly one-note descent into misery, but the leads really anchor it.
I hold the whole thing together.
They do. Glantz talked in his interviews about wrangling Richard E. Grant's, quote, vibrating energy. Grant plays Chauncey like a man vibrating on a frequency of pure terror.
While Claire Foy is a sniper, I mean, she delivers this laser-focused performance as the pragmatist trying to keep the sinking ship afloat, while she secretly revels in the adrenaline of it all.
She loves the chaos.
She totally does. But that same rot infecting their bodies and their fruit bowls completely spills over into how they treat the people around them. The upstairs-downstairs dynamic in this house is vicious.
It is. The Savages rely entirely on a skeleton crew to pull off this massive ruse. At the center are the long-suffering valet, Reginald Halifax, played by Jack Farthing.
He is so good.
So good. And the maid, Dorothy, played by Belle Powley. They are the ones emptying the bedpans and taking the absolute brunt of the Savages' panic.
And the economics of the household are completely upside down. There's an amazing detail where the Savage's daughter, Fanny, has these pet mice.
Oh, I love this detail.
It's so twisted. The mice are being fed such rich scraps that Dorothy, the human maid, resorts to eating the crumbs left over from the rodents. The literal vermin have a higher standard of living than the working class in this house.
It perfectly illustrates how the Savages view their staff. They are just raw material to be harvested. Claire Foy actually drove that point home with a famous ad-lib during a take.
Oh yeah, the eyebrow thing.
Yes. Her character is screaming at her daughter and casually threatens to shave the pet mice to make herself a fashionable pair of eyebrows.
And the director didn't even know she was going to do it. She just delivered the line, wiggled her eyebrows, and kept going. It's hilarious, but it really underscores a deep disregard for anything below her social station.
Which is a dangerous game to play.
Exactly, because that total lack of respect breeds a wildly porous marriage. The script reveals that Lady Savage is secretly sleeping with Reginald, the valet.
And meanwhile, Chauncey is sleeping with Dorothy, the maid.
It's a powder keg. And it detonates right before the Duke and Duchess are supposed to arrive. Chauncey blunders into a room and catches Reginald and Lady Savage together.
Right. Now, a rational person dealing with a bankrupt estate and impending royal guests might, I don't know, sweep this under the rug.
Just ignore it for the night.
But Chauncey is so obsessed with playing the part of the noble gentleman that he demands satisfaction. He challenges his own valet to a duel.
Which is a height of farce, because the rules of 18th century honor culture usually dictated that gentlemen only dueled other gentlemen. But beyond that, Chauncey is a terrible shot.
Awful.
Reginald, on the other hand, is a skilled marksman, precisely because he's the proxy who usually fights Chauncey's duels for him when Chauncey gets caught cheating at cards.
And Reginald tries to apply basic logic to the situation. He points out the absurdity, saying something like, "You challenge me to a duel, I could rip your head off."
Even Lady Savage tries to bribe Reginald to miss on purpose because, in her own twisted way, she does love Chauncey.
But the duel happens anyway.
It does.
And in a stroke of sheer dumb luck, either the wind catches Reginald's bullet or Chauncey trips, and the working-class valet shoots Chauncey's arm clean off.
Forcing an emergency amputation.
Right, performed by the leech doctor, just hours before the dinner of the century. They are frantically bandaging his stump, debating whether the Duke will actually notice that his host is suddenly missing a limb.
So what does this all mean? They destroy their lives, lose a limb. It's the ultimate reply all disaster, but with flintlock pistols. It's just the pinnacle of the rake's progress, isn't it?
That is perfectly stated. For anyone unfamiliar, a rake's progress refers to the famous series of 1733 paintings by William Hogarth, showing wealthy heir's slow decline into debt, madness, and physical ruin due to his own vices.
Oh, so it's a direct parallel.
Exactly. Chauncey's arc is a literal homage to Hogarth. You see the ruling class disarmed, literally and figuratively, by the working class they've exploited.
Oh man, disarm, that's good.
It works on a few levels. There's also this brilliant moment in the script where a frustrated portrait painter who is hired to paint the Savages looking noble finally snaps. He calls them a portrait of familial forgery and counterfeit love.
It's the most honest line in the movie. But the real gut punch, the ultimate punchline of the film, happens right after the amputation. The table is set. The food is cooked. Chauncey's bleeding through his bandages, but standing upright.
Ready to greet the royals.
Right. And then a messenger arrives at the door with a letter from the Devonshires.
Lord Vernon, the original host, didn't have the pox after all. It was a false alarm, so the Duke and Duchess are staying with him. They aren't coming to Savage House.
They destroy their lives, pawned their history, and lost a limb, all for an audience that canceled. And immediately after, the debt collectors arrive with the authorities. Chauncey is hauled off to Fleet Debtors Prison, and the house is seized.
Their obsession with status was just a game where the rules were rigged against them from the start. They sacrificed their physical reality for a social fantasy that evaporated the second it was tested.
Watching them self-destruct over a canceled